Hello. Hi, everybody. Hi. There's Evan. Great. Hi, Bernie. Hi, Evan.
Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
Simone. Hi, everybody who's logging in. How are you doing? I
Can you
know
hear
I'm like
me?
adjusting.
I'm good. Can you hear me
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll give people a
The
couple
top of my
minutes.
head really is not the best part of me.
No, I've had to test over the weeks, raising and lowering my own height.
Yeah, it's okay. How are
Um,
you?
I am hanging in there. Looking forward to a nice weekend. How are you doing today, Evan?
I gotta tell you, the air quality, I think, on the planet has been better.
Yeah, yeah. I know for anybody who is tuning in from near Aspen or in California, we're dealing with wildfires, and the
A little bit.
animals are feeling it. Yeah, I have the same thing. Um, and what I will do is in just a few minutes, we'll give people a couple of minutes to log in, and then I can turn off the comment feed so that it doesn't block your lovely face
Oh,
from
yeah.
your.
Great.
But for anyone who is tuning in, this is our kind of weekly Slow Look Live, kind of settling into the end of the week, shifting in toward the weekend. um, Focusing on different creative people and conversations about what they're up to. So I'm Rachel Ropeik from the Aspen Art Museum. My guest this week is Evan Zislis from the Aspen Institute. So we're not in the same physical place right now, but we're neighbors. um, and just so that anybody watching has an idea of kind of what our general plan for our conversation today is, we thought we would kind of start broad and then narrow down. So Evan has a really interesting project that he's in charge of at the Institute, and we will get to talking about that. But we sort of thought we would start with some kind of big ideas that are on our minds, and then focus on how those big ideas might be impacting our work, right? Um, so here, I'm gonna turn off the comments just so they don't keep blocking your face. And then, great. Now we have a pared down visual interface. Um, so I don't know. I mean, Evan, I know we started with this idea of this Facebook post that you had found. Do you want to start with that as maybe
Mm.
the kickoff to this conversation?
Yeah, I'll paraphrase. It was a wonderful sentiment. If you look at this moment in time, what are the unusual sets of circumstances that people might look at and consider awful, just detriments? I mean, just imagine all of the different things that people are dealing with in the world throughout history. And in those moments of awfulness, what if, and I love this sentiment, what if those conditions, those unique, negative, awful conditions, are actually opportunities to incubate some resilient characteristic that emerges out of those sets of circumstances? What if what collectively we would consider to be just one tragic series of things after another, and we are certainly in one of those moments, no one could deny that 2020 will go down in history as one of those pivotal times when collectively we were all thinking to ourselves, oh my God, But what if in this moment, especially for kids who are uniquely resilient in the world, what if these unique sets of circumstances create an atmosphere or an ecosystem that they emerge out of actually more resilient as a result of this time? And I think that there's a lot of panic and a lot of anxiety and a lot of, oh my God, this is what's happening. This is how we're being impacted right now. And when I say we, I mean those on the planet that are disproportionately impacted um, by the entirety of what is going on in our world right now. Um, and I love that sentiment. What if kids emerge out of this with a different sense of the world that turns out to be a strength? What if leaders emerge, and they will, they do in every era of history. Leaders have emerged out of times of crisis and had some different perspective that actually gave them an advantage in the long run.
I think that that idea of resilience is sort of an interesting one to be thinking about right now. And not that it's either or, right? You know, there can be this difficult moment, and also it has this potential for resilience, which I think is really interesting. And I think like that idea of um, like what are some of the things that might like the pace um, of the way life has been
Yeah.
going to change, what might need to slow down, what might need to speed up, and that kids might be kind of learning their own version of that, I guess.
And I think when you say speed up and slow down, time has just completely distorted as far as it seems that time has just, and it's not consistently slow. It's like these starts and stops, and all of a sudden you open your eyes or look up and realize how much time has passed. And looking back, how much has happened. And it seems like all at once, there's this need to stop and pause and just be in this moment, which is in many, I think for so many people, it's all they have is this moment. That is the entirety of their experience is right now. And there is no projecting forward. There is no looking backwards. It's just what is right in this moment. And that is all that I have influence over. And then almost simultaneously, there's this urgency to action. And the juxtaposition of that has just completely skewed
Yeah.
time.
I feel like it's funny. There have been all of these moments, and I keep having conversations with people about this where it's like there have been some weeks during this pandemic period that feel like they have gone by, you know, in the blink of an eye, and then some weeks that feel like they've lasted a month. You know, it's like there's just so little, and then you do that, picking your head up, and you realize, okay, at the beginning of this, you know, I've heard some people recently, in the last week or so, just saying, I foolishly, naively thought that we would be done with this in 2 months, and then we would be able to get back to our lives. But there is, like you just said, it's like right now there is some kind of, it feels like there's some kind of moment of a larger realization of let's pause and look at where we're at right now and kind of focus on this moment, especially with kids going back to school, in all of these various ways that kids are going back to school, and kind of thinking about it's like settling in a little bit with this as and I'm going to avoid the new normal as the idea, but settling in with that idea of being present for whatever is upon us, I guess.
Well, you know what, when we talk about what is upon us, I think that it's important to really acknowledge the breadth of what is going on in the world. It is not just a pandemic. It is not just um, a global economic crisis. It is not just um, generational systemic racism. and generational structural poverty on the basis of systemic racism. It's not just issues of um, cultural and gender and racial equity. It is not just access to fair and affordable housing or fair and quality education. The entirety of what is happening right now, this moment, has encapsulated the last 100 years of momentum into a single moment in time. It's kind of like the entirety of everything that has happened in the human experience is is shrunken and condensed in this way that now all of those issues have been illuminated with this bright light that is now we're unable to ignore or sweep under the rug or pretend like things are okay. There are so many that are dealing with daily food scarcity, housing security, like the issues of what this moment is, what is happening. When we said we thought that this would all be over by now,
Yeah.
we many of us are really just in this moment right now, coming to some understanding or awareness of what has been going on along. I think the good news is that collectively, across the planet, across countries, throughout all segments and sectors of humanity and society, we're all starting to share an empathetic view of what is happening.
I hope so. I mean, I think that that is also a theme that's been echoing in a lot of the conversations that I've been having with folks is um, that if they're like whatever hope we can look for in this moment, it's that kind of increased empathy or a shared understanding of things that are going on in the world that may not be affecting me as an individual, for example, but may indeed be very seriously affecting somebody else. And that just because our experiences are different from each other doesn't mean that one should weigh more heavily or the other. And I wonder
Well,
if
not
that's
only that,
go ahead,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was just going to ask you to
Well,
explain your initiative, but finish your thought first.
oh, well, what I was going to say is I think what is happening right now is that we are collectively, as a species, starting to take on and amplify some of these important, um, we're capturing these moments for what they are, and that I think cumulatively the planet is ready for change, is ready to evolve, and I think it's things have reached a head, they've come to a head, and now we're ready to emerge out of this collectively as a species, and, just out of our own sheer survival on this planet. Not just issues of equity, not just issues of public health or economic prosperity, but climate change. I mean, just the issues that are so ever present and so omnipresent and so urgent, urgent.
Yeah.
And so much of the world, 3/4 of the Earth's population, 3/4 of the Earth's population has always just suffered so tragically and just out of sight, out of mind for Judeo-Christian Western civilization. We're just so far removed from what the popular human experience really is on the planet. And now I think this is really bringing to light issues that have been there all along. And now we have an opportunity to evolve out of this experience together without, making a renewed commitment not to leave anyone behind. So,
So maybe that is kind of like the way to transition into you talking about this initiative that you're spearheading with the an institute, how we connected in the first place. Because I feel like it's like those values are, at least from my point of view, it's like you're trying to bring some of those values into on the ground, actionable projects. So will you actually just tell people a little bit about the project? the
Sure.
initiative?
So um, I'm brand new to the Aspen Institute, which is an incredible global organization that is rooted in education and public policy and um, reshaping and really turning big ideas around in order to solve the greatest challenges of our time. And for 70 years, that has been the bedrock and the foundation of the Aspen Institute. And they have multiple public policy departments, mostly based out of Washington, D.C., um, and peppered throughout the country, focused on issues of economic development and public health and information systems and culture and society and the arts and humanities, everything from technology to public health, issues of politics, and so on and so forth. It is the entirety of the human experience sort of encapsulated and being looked at through one nonprofit organization. It is a behemoth. It feels like a behemoth kind of an organization to be a part of. And what an honor to join them in this moment in time. I'm new to their organization as of April. So I joined them during the pandemic. I've only been on the job for about 4 months now. My position is I'm the new director of community engagement, which is a brand new position, based here in the Roaring Fork Valley in the high Rockies of Colorado. Um, I am charged with sort of building from scratch a brand new department, generously funded by Bob and Soledad Hurst in Aspen, Colorado. The Hurst Community Initiative is tasked with identifying those hardest hit by the defining challenges of our time, and looking for opportunities to promote dialogue, increase understanding, and facilitate opportunities for meaningful collaboration. And so what I've been doing for the last 4 months is reaching out into my community. I've been here for 20 years. I really thought I knew the Valley. When you go on a listening tour, you learn about your community all over again. So my job is really to try to identify what are the priorities as it relates to those that are hardest hit. Who is experiencing the most suffering right now? Who has their backs up against a wall with really nowhere to go? Who is experiencing daily challenges that are pitted against terrible options? Terrible options. Do I pay my rent? Do I buy food? The new statistics are 1 in 4 families are experiencing food scarcity. The eviction rate is on the rise. People are unable to gain access to any sort of sustainable income. As we are up here in the Roaring Fork Valley, we have, I think still the single highest unemployment rate in the state of Colorado because of our reliance on the tourism industry. And because we've been so hard hit, there have been so many people, this domino effect throughout the region of what we would describe now as essential workers who got laid off, many of whom are immigrant, undocumented, and are running out of resources very quickly. So issues of education and transportation and human trafficking here in the Valley, issues of homelessness and public health, all of the above. So that's kind of what I have eyes on through the Hearst Community Initiative. And really what I'm looking for are opportunities to bring elected officials, Aspen to Parachute, Colorado, and non-elected community leaders together to look for ways to get folks out of their silos, to start reaching across racial, socioeconomic, political, geographical, cultural lines in order to start thinking of our community where the Aspen Institute has been based really for 70 years, for us to really start thinking more of ourselves as one community. So that's the Hearst Community Initiative.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I think as somebody who started my job at the museum back in February and had not been to Aspen before I came out to interview for this job here. It's been
From New York
really,
City.
yeah, from New York City.
Yeah.
um, it's been really interesting to learn more about the community, and I'm still obviously in kind of the early months of doing so, but because there is this outside perception that this is an area of such privilege, and
Sure.
that it's kind of this destination that so many kind of the like wealthiest um,
Sure.
world want to come here and have their beautiful homes. And I mean, the mountains
True.
are gorgeous and they're skiing, right? And that I think is so much the perception of this area.
Yeah.
And then the reality of it is, I mean, that is certainly part of where we live. But the
Yeah.
reality of it is more complicated. And I think it's been really interesting from my point of view. And also I'm kind of excited to keep on like figuring out how we can partner with things going forward, about figuring out how it's almost like this valley is like a little microcosm of so many of these larger societal concerns, right? Income inequality and housing insecurity and food scarcity and all of that, right? And I think it's been very like enriching for me to find all of these folks who are working on addressing that in this immediate area. It's been very like refreshing or inspiring, I guess.
Well, I think one of the unique things about Aspen to Parachute in particular, it's 3 counties, it's 4 school districts. It is a microcosm of America. We don't have major, big, booming populations of certain cultures. Certainly, we are. Our minority population. I think we're still 30% Latino communities. Um, we don't have a giant population of African Americans. We don't have a giant population of Asian Americans or East Indian Americans. But those among those groups that live here, their experience is no less diminished. They are still experiencing this moment as much as anyone anywhere. And so it's important for us to really look to the people in our community and start to embrace them as one community. When we talk about issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, we often leave out this concept of inherent belonging, that there's this intrinsic humanity about each of us that makes us worthy of belonging in whatever sphere we find ourselves in. And so part of the Hearst Community Initiative really is to nurture that concept. It's really to engage with people and encourage people to engage with each other in an era where civil discourse is a lost, forgotten practice. It is, I think, my biggest role is to encourage people to see each other and to try to listen and hear someone else's perspective and look for any shred of common ground, anything that we can look at and point to and say, yes, we share this, we have this in common. That is the first step in bridging some of the chasm that I think our country is immersed in at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting work. We're like I said, we're a brand new program. And so I also represent the entirety, I'm a conduit for the entirety of the Aspen Institute's global programming to the communities of the Roaring Fork and Colorado River valleys and vice versa. So when there are cool, amazing things happening here, it's my job to share them with the Aspen Institute so that they can be talked about as a case study of what is going on in the world. What positive things are coming out of this moment in time. And there are many, many positive things coming out of this moment in time that are emerging right here in our little corner of the world. So it's really cool and exciting to be a part of all of that.
And I do feel like I've been thinking about that a lot recently, that idea of holding both of those things simultaneously, right? That this can be a moment of incredible difficulties and difficulties that I personally am not suffering from nearly as much as many other people are, right?
Sure.
And that at the same time, it can be a moment of learning and new ways of working and new ways forward and new kinds of collaboration, like that those things exist simultaneously. I'm like holding my hands up evenly, but they're off camera, so I'll try and lift them up. Just because I think that is, like, I'm trying not to be too much of either a cynic or a kind of unfounded optimist, I guess, about going forward. But it is like there are reasons for both of those approaches right now.
Well,
But that,
I think anything that two individuals or two groups of individuals or an infinite number of individuals, anything that people can experience on a personal level gives them an opportunity. It opens the door for empathy. It opens the door to share someone else's experience, to acknowledge another human being as worthy of their interpretation of their own experience, and to be able to have a feeling based on your own experience allows you the ability to open your heart to someone else and say, I have felt frustration. I have felt sadness. I have felt anger. I have felt despair. I have felt moments of compassion and generosity. And it's that sort of empathetic lens that will start to bridge where we go from here. In a time when it just seems like people have stopped talking to each other and they're just talking over each other. So it's a small step in a direction that I think might make a big change down the road.
yeah. And I think it's also, it's like the value of hearing people's experiences and people's stories and bringing people together whose experiences and stories may be very different from each other. But creating these platforms for them to hear from someone that they might not be talking to in their day-to-day life, right? Who's not in their immediate circle. And I think, as you just said, it's like we're either talking over each other or we're only talking to the same people or the people who we know and think just like us, right? And trying to create
That's right.
to reach out beyond that, where it's, you know, like I can be in conversation with someone whose experience is very different from mine, but hearing about that experience can be sort of a new learning opportunity for me. Or, you know, creating those opportunities is exciting. I mean, we try to do that.
Well, you had described the name of this show, so your little whatever this is, Slow Look, right? So if you were going to do the slow look in an art museum,
Yeah.
the way that you had described this to me was this. It was a wonderful way to just slow down how we go through the world. If you were going to do the slow look in a museum, you would linger a bit longer and try to hone in or focus on a piece of the entirety of the art in a different way that you might otherwise if you were just going through the museum. And what I think that this moment gives us the opportunity or permission to do is to approach this in that way. What would be the slow look if we knew that we have to come out of this? The Institute talks about building it back better. If we could come out of this, not going back to some sense of normalcy, because that is an unacceptable way to return to the world from whatever this is. If we had to evolve out of this and move in a forward direction, what if we took the moment to pause and slow look at this and see things that we never saw before, see the pieces and the minutia that we didn't ever take the time to understand. And if in doing so gives us a different perspective that allows us to evolve out of this with more empathy and more compassion and more generosity and more willingness to hear and not be right all the time. For those of us who are right, we may be right, but that can't be the way that we evolve out of this. Because in being right, we we make others wrong, and that is not creating communities of belonging. That is creating communities of othering, and it will only perpetuate the ingredients that brought us here in the first place. So.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that is actually kind of like a nice, like hopeful without being unfairly optimistic or blindly
Fair
optimistic
enough.
note to end on is that I do think I'm really like interested to see how we can keep collaborating and how the initiative that you have got going on about bringing all of these communities together can be an opportunity for fostering some of that new understanding and that building of empathy and the communities of belonging. I think that's like the phrase I want to hold on to the most coming out
we,
of this.
we had talked about earlier, we had talked about this visual of this
Oh yeah,
giant board game, right?
yeah,
And it has all of these hundreds of pieces strewn about this very complex, complicated board game. And it's as if somebody came up and just smashed the board game into the air. And all of these little pieces and particles are just now in the air, not necessarily even suspended, but just like up. And if we took the moment to reconfigure and pause and with intention collectively decide how we want to reassemble and how what we choose and what we just let fall to the ground. Um, that's to me that feels like an optimistic morsel that I can grab onto and feel like I can hold onto and ride.
yeah, yeah. It's like we're in the moment of the suspended pieces.
Yeah,
So let's think
and
about
what
how
we
we
choose to do.
where we want to
And
reconfigure that.
some things I think will ought to just we should just let fall and become obsolete. And next year or 10 years or 20 or 100 years from now, we'll look back on those pieces on the floor and scratch our heads and wonder how we ever allowed them to exist on the board in the first place. Um,
Yeah.
and I'll go back to young people's resilience. The new board, whatever it is, if we're using this metaphor, I think will be created by the next generation. It will be those that are emerging out of this experience with a new sense of the world and new priorities. And I think they're going to force our hands in a way that collectively we all evolve.
Yeah.
And that gives me hope.
Yes, I agree. I think the generations that are coming up, I'm very excited to see what they can bring to us.
Well,
All
if
right.
there's a word, I would say that resilience would be the word that I hope to emerge out of this
Yeah.
conversation. Thank you so much for the
Here,
opportunity to
thank
chat.
you. Absolutely. Here's to resilience and putting the pieces back in a better place on the other side of all of these decisions.
We're going to build
And
it back better.
there you go. We'll do it. We'll do it the Aspen Institute way. All right. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, you too.